All righty.
Speaking of flat statements,
Roman Reigns has made some lately, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, I don't know how flat they were, but they certainly are getting a lot of attention.
People are up in arms about his opinions on various people, such as CM Punk, I believe.
Apparently, he did an interview with Ariel Helwani. I think it's on BT Sport. That's what it says here. And I didn't watch the entire interview, but clearly several clips went viral pretty quickly. Several quotes went viral. And we have those here. We have a little bit of audio if you want to hear it, because I think the setup is important so that it's not just...
We want everything in context here. We don't want to just blurt out anything without giving proper contextual meaning to the thing.
Right, and we'll get to Moxley in a little bit. I wrestle without contextual meaning, but we're going to first talk about the quote about...
Wait a minute.
What?
That should be his new hometown, from no contextual meaning. John Moxley. All right, yeah, go ahead.
But here is a little bit, just so we could review it and put it in the proper context, Ariel Helwani interviewing Roman Reigns.
Getting back to John, one thing that has been talked about a lot, the aforementioned CM Punk talked about it a lot as well, about these guys who would leave and come back and get the big spot, right? They get the main event of WrestleMania and then they leave and come back. How do you feel about that? You're a constant. He's been gone. He's coming back. Who knows if he sticks around past SummerSlam? Are you okay with that sort of thing, that sort of arrangement? The guys who over the last 2 decades or so have left and come back, while the guys like you are in Tulsa and Charlotte and God knows where tomorrow night.
Well, besides the fact that he completely set him up with that question there,
yeah.
I mean, do you remember CM Punk? I believe the story was he had a problem. Was it when The Rock came back that The Rock all of a sudden got, I mean, again, as he should, he's The Rock, got elevated to the top spot with guys who were there every week, like CM Punk.
Yes, and I believe there were comments, and I don't know whether that it was legitimate irritation, whether it was intention of doing an angle or a little bit of both, trying to capitalize and make chicken salad out of chicken shit. But I believe he said something about that, yes.
So again, there's the question, and none of the quotes have contained that question. So there's the question, and here is part of Roman's answer right directly after the question.
I can see it from both perspectives, but I think you've said it before, the high tide raises all the boats, right? Everybody benefits. So I do think there's that strange threshold, but I think, man, those statements are coming from bitter people, who possibly thought they were better than they really were. When it comes down to it, CM Punk was not as good or as over as a John Cena. Wasn't as good or as over and moved the needle like The Rock. It was just what it was. From a full-time performer, I understand the frustration and wanting more. But like I said before, you got to take it. I'm a full-time performer. But I've done everything that needs to be done to stay in this position, to be in this position, to continue to make the opportunity for myself to be in a main event of SummerSlam against a John Cena. And if anybody ever comes along to try to push me out of that, scenario, I'm gonna fight like hell to keep, the ground that I've made. So.
Well, there's the crux of what he had to say following Ariel Helwani's.
Boy, these are inflammatory comments, aren't they? Holy mackerel. How dare he? No, everybody, the tweet that was tweeted out was basically Roman Reigns just saying, these statements are coming from people who thought they were better than they were. CM Punk wasn't as good or as over as John Cena. He didn't move the needle like The Rock. That was the quote in the tweet. So everybody's, he wasn't just asked a question about, which flavor of ice cream he likes and started in on Cena or started in on the CM Punk. The name was mentioned. I don't think it's inflammatory to anybody to say, well, they didn't move the needle like The Rock because who fucking did except for Austin. And I think he's got to say CM Punk wasn't as good or as over as John Cena because John Cena's the guy he's wrestling at SummerSlam. But it wasn't like he went out of his way to use this platform to, let me talk about a motherfucker or a couple of motherfuckers that I don't particularly like. It was a response to a question, and he's working to hype his match at SummerSlam, while at the same time trying not to, as they say, insult anybody's intelligence, but he doesn't want to fucking talk about wrestling being a work either. So he talks about the fight that he's made to keep his spot and etc. And he doesn't have to come and go like these other guys. But this is not inflammatory. It's a guy that works for the WWE selling his main event match and responding to an interviewer that mentioned a guy's name that used to be there.
Did you ever hear who CM Punk wanted the original Shield to be? Remember, the Shield ended up being, of course, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, now Jon Moxley, and Roman Reigns. CM Punk, he was in the mix. That was all about him. He was in the mix with that angle. He originally recommended recommended a different version of the Shield. Did you ever hear what that was?
I did, but I can't recall it now, and hopefully you can.
Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Chris Hero.
That's right, Hero. Because Hero was a tremendous performer at that time. I haven't seen him lately. I'm sure he probably still is, but he was motivated. He had changed his body. He was at the best I'd seen him around that time period, and they never did a goddamn thing with him. Well, there you go.
There's Roman Reigns' controversial.
I mean,
what was more controversial, his statement or Ariel Helwani's question?
I don't even think Ariel Helwani. Hey, lady. I sound like Bill Apter doing Jerry Lewis now. I don't think Ariel Helwani's question was particularly inflammatory either. Did he lead him to say something about CM Punk? Maybe, because he mentioned his name and he, is obviously aware that might get some views, but it wasn't. It was simply a question of, you're wrestling a guy that's come back after he's gone to Hollywood and he's done this and done that. People in the past have said that they resent these guys coming back every so often when they're there all the time. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
But Roman Reigns is smart enough to know that John Cena coming back, I think he botched the phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats, but who doesn't want a fucking movie star that used to actually be a professional wrestler and still is, for that matter? Whether it's The Rock or John Cena on the card. You don't want David Arquette. He wasn't a movie star or a goddamn wrestler, but a wrestler that became an actual movie star. You would want them on the card whenever you could get them. Or an icon like The Undertaker that for a number of years had one big match a year in him on the big show when it counted. Why wouldn't you want that? Because you're going to make more money of being on that guy's card than main eventing in a phone booth.